Comic books.
Comic books. Comics.
Comic book podcast. Comics.
Because they have no
You must be the after show guy.
I am the after show guy.
You
and so
are.
are you.
I am. We are the after show guys.
And we both like Italian.
And so do
Yes.
you.
Yes. I don't think we need to explain that. I think it's fine.
No, it's fine. fine.
So I went ahead and decided on Batgirl over Green Arrow because once you were like, I'm okay with it. Really, my thought process is this. We have seen a couple of stories by Bendis that don't maybe have a very good understanding of women. Particularly with the Janet Van Dyne reaction to letting it slip about Wanda's kids and all that stuff, and some of the sexism in that story, and then the story with Spider-Woman, where we didn't feel like she was a very empowered character either. I feel like we need to do a story about an empowered female character.
Makes
So
sense.
that's why I went ahead and decided let's do Batgirl. I was talking with Nate very recently, and he said, I wonder what eras of Batgirl there are that are accessible for a new reader. And I said, well, New 52. And he was like, oh, yeah, I always forget about that book, but I remember really liking it when it came out. And it's been several years since I've read it. But I think it's going to be nice after what we just did to do something that's mainline continuity as well. That's not like a crazy out there weird concept. I think I might have picked this story sort of in reaction to us doing Edge of Spider-Verse. And I was like, oh, so we can do like crazy, like weird stories on this. Like, all right, I know a crazy weird Batman story that I own. But it is interesting hearing your take on that because you don't have the benefit of having read the whole Snyder Capullo run, and you also don't have the benefit of having read Scott Snyder's run on Justice League. So I knew that your opinion on this was going to be a little bit different, but actually I kind of welcomed that because I thought, can this be fully enjoyed by somebody that's like an outside reader? And I think what we're finding is that oh, my voice got really high there. There are a lot of average scores across these comic books once we start looking at them with a really critical eye. There are a lot of things that I really enjoy that if I'm actually to break it down into its nuts and bolts, I go, oh, they could have improved this or they could have improved that, or it's I don't know if it's exactly depressing me. I'm just kind of surprised.
Well, without being overly nitpicky, because I feel like we could really get into the nitty gritty and pick things apart and rate
Oh, sure.
everything super low. But
Mhm.
I try to frame my readings more of like, what was my experience with this? And,
Mhm.
like a lot of survey questions, would I recommend this to a friend? That
Sure.
sort of thing. And this one was especially hard to rate because I had the Spider-Woman origin right before this where I gave it a 2 out of 5. So if I gave this one a 2 out of 5, I really didn't think that they were similar.
No, this is
even
pretty
with
different.
that same score. So it was tough, and I didn't want to give it a 1 because it wasn't like it was just terrible like some noob wrote it. It did have a lot of good things to it.
I would argue this was much better implemented than Spider-Woman Origin.
Right.
And I almost want to retroactively go drop a 0.5 off Spider-Woman Origin from my score because
Wow.
just because if I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5, this is clearly just, I don't know. It's clearly just better implemented than that story was.
That was my, like, if I gave it the same score,
Mhm.
it doesn't say why, like, but
Right.
it is similar in, I guess, like with Spider-Woman Origin, I really liked the character and the story and what they were trying to do with the character. They just botched it. Whereas
Right.
with this, I like Batman and their writing was really good. I just didn't like what they were doing.
Yeah, the actual concept itself, you were just like, this is not for me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that.
And the dystopian post-apocalyptic future thing, like it's not like that's just a turnoff for me, and I think I'm just going to rate it 1 out of 5 just because of that. It wasn't that like it's not terrible. It's not something I hate. It was just a whole lot of dystopian stuff. It's like people are choosing doom and people suck, and
Right.
Bruce Wayne, he sucks and he wants to be a villain now, and the Joker was like the most lighthearted character in the
He
story
was.
because even Wonder Woman was like depressed and Superman was out of it, and it's
Yeah,
just like,
when
geez.
Superman was, I mean, we didn't see the real Superman at any point, did we? He was dead for the whole story, I think.
Yeah, just
Um,
the robots.
yeah, just the Superman robots that for some reason had blood when Wonder Woman cut him in half.
Well,
Uh, one thing we didn't really get into that I thought was interesting about this though is that it is a Black Label book, but both Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo restrained themselves from making it like a really hard R. And they
yeah,
could have done that with a Black Label, but they didn't. And I found that interesting. We didn't have F bombs. There was some swearing, but it
right.
wasn't more than you would hear in a PG-13. And somebody would get their arm cut off, or I think Omega gets his head cut off at the end, maybe. But really, even that was done mostly in silhouette. There were a couple panels where there was a ton of blood, but it
Yeah.
again, it was a little bit pulled back from what I would have expected because it wasn't like that HBO thing of like, oh, we can show nudity and gore now, so let's have all the nudity and gore.
Right. Like I didn't know that it was a Black Label until you said that.
Yeah.
Like nothing in it really seemed that like even like you said with the swearing or any of the gore, it just seemed pretty
Mm-hmm.
tame for a typical story, so it didn't stick out to me like, oh, they're going for ratings or they're going for shock value or anything like that. It's not like they had future Bruce, old Bruce is like, well, I'm going to have me a young mistress now because I'm just going all out, and
Right.
he's got like women in leotards everywhere and there's nudity and going for that rating. They didn't do that, which if they did, I think that would have definitely dropped it
Oh
to
yeah. Well, that would have
below a
dropped it for
2.
me too. Especially if they had I was glad that even though Wonder Woman wasn't all hopeful at the beginning, I was glad that they showed her incredible combat ability at various points and they had her just taking out Superman robots like they were nothing. And I don't really know how she shot arrows through Green Lantern constructs, but she did that
Mm.
as well. I also thought the use of Martian Manhunter as the amplifier for Omega's anti-life equation generator or whatever made sense.
Yeah.
I did actually kind of like that moment when Wonder Woman was there and then she got the lasso of truth on him and was able to kind of snap him out of it and everything. I thought that was kind of cool. Uh, I was glad that this was something that incorporated more of the DC universe than just Batman, because I
Right.
think if you limited the scope of it like that, it wouldn't have felt as grand. But I also do think you're right. The problem with post-apocalyptic stuff is, I mean, is it too played out at this point? Is there any way to do a post-apocalyptic story of any kind and make it feel new in 2020
Well,
or 2021?
that's a very loaded question because I think you could say that about just about any type of storytelling trope, like especially with these characters that have been around for so long and all the stories that we've had with these characters, and then also not even comic book related, just stories and novels in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question has been asked before: have we done everything that there is to do? Which I think the answer is no.
Right.
But it just it's interesting because sometimes I think maybe we skirt the issue a little bit, and so we feature something, but we don't go for it because oh well, this trope has been done to death, so we're just gonna have it in here, but we're really not gonna explore it too much. Kind of like
Sure.
some of what they did earlier of him waking up in the I don't know hospital or psych ward or whatever, and
Right.
things like that. Like they visited it, but then they sort of moved on.
I almost wonder if Scott Snyder if he put that in there to be like, look, you guys, it's your internet theory. This is stupid. We're moving on from this now. Because I've heard that before, and it's one of those, there are conspiracy videos all over YouTube, or here's my hot take on Batman, or here's my hot take on, whatever the thing is. And it's like you're taking a literary analysis degree and you're like dissecting something where it's not really that deep. I don't think there's that much there. And yeah, I don't know. I I don't tend to like a lot of that stuff. There are some people that I used to work with that would send me a link to like, oh, here's a conspiracy theory about Rugrats that reveals that, Tommy is going to grow up to be a serial killer or something like, I mean, it's stupid crap like that where I'm just like, okay, like I'll just stay off the internet for a while.
I don't know. Like I think it's entertaining, but I don't think that it's more entertaining as like something to do offline versus like
Yeah.
something actually in the story. And that was again my biggest complaint with this. Like I think if they just would have framed it differently in the first part, it would have
Hmm.
really at least helped me to not just understand what was going on, but understand what they're going for. Is they're taking a story where something happened and they're playing out the other side of that story,
Right.
which still would be hard to accept that Bruce Wayne would be Omega for me, but at
Well, I
least it would
don't think
be
they justify it. I think that's the
right.
problem. I think maybe there's a way to do that, but I don't think that they do it in this story.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like if they trampled
Yeah.
over Alfred and, you know,
Yeah.
these bad things happen to him all in a short time, I mean, it could go that you could make it work that direction, but they,
Yeah, I think you have to kill Alfred to make Bruce, to crack Bruce,
right.
honestly. I think that's really the only way to because he's lost Robins before. He's I mean, he's been through a lot of truly awful stuff even post Batman. So, and he still keeps coming, so
Hmm.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how there's one of the people I used to talk to on the wiki, Salazar Knight, and I think his screen name was S for Hope, but he's more of a Batman fan than a Superman fan. So go figure. I figured that one out. But he is super well read in Batman, and I wonder if I can get him to listen to this because it would be really interesting to hear his take. We used to have a lot of epic disagreements about the nature of Batman. Like, for instance, he didn't think even the experiment of having Bruce actually marry Selina is something that should be even entertained. He was
Wow.
like, no, it feels like a sales gimmick. Uh, if Tom King understands Batman, he won't have them get married. And, sure enough, the issue ended up being a fake out where at the end she doesn't show up at the altar and all this stuff. And it was kind of horrible. But it was horrible, especially because DC built up this event over months and they were like, hey, Batman's going to get married. It's the wedding of the century and all this stuff. And I don't know. I think I'm more open to writers doing things like that and changing the status quo pretty drastically. But I think, like you said, they didn't do the legwork in this story to justify what they were saying Bruce Wayne was up to.
Right.
So,
I think you have to, well, you do. You have to mix it up to keep it fresh because
yeah,
if you keep Batman the same, that he was when he first premiered to stories that are going on now and there's no change, eventually after a while you're going to get tired of reading it because
yeah,
he's always the same and you sort of run out of stories to some degree without repeating yourself because you can't make any changes. Whereas if you can throw just one kind of wild card into the mix of like, okay, he has this relationship with Selina. Okay, now we can do something with this.
right.
We can add some drama. We can put her in some peril and see what Bruce will do. Based on that, is he going to choose justice over his feelings that he has for her? Is he
Right.
going to let her go if he catches her red-handed? You throw just this little thing into the mix and it opens up such a wide variety of storytelling that you didn't have access to
Hmm.
before. So, but if you keep it the same, what keeps you as a reader listening to these stories over and over where it's like he's a great detective, he solves the case, he figures out what happened, he beats the bad guy, he
Right.
wins, and he goes to bed and wakes up the next day.
I think he is. I think it's hard specifically with Batman more than any other comic book character because I really think maybe the Marvel equivalent would be the Punisher, where both of them their characters are kind of built on this idea that they don't really change or relent a whole lot. And so I think he's a harder one to do it with than most of the other ones. Um, but I think adding something external like Selena isn't necessarily bad. And I mean, King was like made it more explicit where it was like, yes, they're actually dating, yes, they're getting engaged. They're moving forward with this relationship. It's not just going to be the games of cat and mouse bat and cat that we've been playing for all these years. And I think that's worth exploring. Do you keep them married for the next 150 issues? Maybe not. It's not. You're never going to get a couple as iconic as like Superman and Lois, I don't think. But I feel like Batman and Selena could be close. And there have been Earth 2 stories, for instance, where they did get married and had a daughter, and like that's the Huntress character is actually Helena Wayne on Earth 2. So I think there are directions to take it. I don't know.
Did they have a picture of Bruce with Helena's mother?
I'm sure they did.
That's from DCUO.
Everybody out there play DCUO just for that terribly voice acted
with my mother.
There's
so much my mistake. You were my mistake.
There's so much voice acting in that game that I guess some of it had to be bad, but yeah, that section was particularly cringy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
It's funny. I just remember playing that instance where you play as the Huntress like over and over and over, and I don't know, was the cutscene like not skippable or something? So every time you get to the end, it's like,
yeah, you'd get a different boss, and it was like really hard, and so you'd get killed, and so you'd have to get back to that point and then watch the cutscene again.
Oh my gosh, that was so terrible. Yeah. That game is still going. I wonder if it's quality. I mean, I don't know. I kind of got to the point where I was like, they changed the, how the gameplay was and stuff, and I was like, I don't know, this isn't the DCUO I knew.
Well, that's the thing about change is,
you
either accept change or you fight change, I guess. And not all change is good change, not all change is bad change, and not everything does need to change. But
Batman really changed, though.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents, which is change. So
there you go.
No, but that's what I was saying before is like if you keep the character the same, then what new stories can you tell? But at the same time, like if he decides to get some help and somehow is able to stop blaming him for the murder of his parents, and then he hangs up the Batman cowl and decides to focus on Wayne Enterprises, and he's going to better people's lives by being a good entrepreneur and businessman and help clean up the city. I mean, that's an interesting angle, but at the same time, it takes us away from Batman.
Right.
And there's not as much excitement there. I mean, I guess you could explore it. I don't know if anyone has or not, but trying to pull him back into that world, it'd probably be only a matter of time before he dons the cowl again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But
just wait until Oswald Cobblepot makes some bad deal with somebody, or something like that. There'll be what was I going to say? There are several of those like villains trying to reform stories that they tell in the animated series. Actually, there's one for Penguin. There's one for the most famous one is probably the one where Harley Quinn decides to try and go straight. But there's a few others where like the third season they were playing with that idea, and there was always kind of this thought of like Bruce is just waiting for them to flip so he can put the cowl back on and come after him. And I think that's how it would be if he tried to become just a straight up businessman. I think he would still be keeping tabs on those people. And as soon as they started to veer off the straight and narrow, he would be like, I'm Batman, and
just like that,
come after him. So yeah, I don't think he can keep his hand out of the cookie jar. It's going to be cool to read comics about Barbara Gordon though. weirdly, the New 52 series is the first solo series that Barbara Gordon had.
Wow.
Because the Batgirl title before that was Cassandra Cain, who is now known as Orphan. She also was in the Birds of Prey movie, but she was in that movie in name only. So, yeah, the character had nothing to do with Cassandra Cain in the comics. She's the daughter of Lady Shiva, who's one of Ra's al Ghul's top assassins, I think. So that's how she's tied into the Batman world. But yeah, she was Batgirl for a very long time. Pre New 52. So yeah.
Interesting.
enough,
Well, should be
Should be
fun.
interesting.
It's
And I
called,
think maybe I'm sorry, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say it's called The Darkest Reflection, so I'm a little scared after reading this one. What's going to happen?
You know,
You should be.
what I remember of Gail Simone's run is that it was dark, but that it really played up Barbara's intelligence and her ability to adapt and just her sheer toughness. And I don't remember any like over sexualization or anything like that. I think there was maybe some with the art, but it certainly wasn't like what we experienced in that Spider-Woman
Mhm.
book, where it's like, oh, I'm completely naked now, because I've been in a coma or whatever. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So
I hope it's good because I feel like
yeah.
I've been rating things kind of low for a while. And
Yeah.
it'd be nice to have something that like maybe I have some disagreements or I find
Mhm.
some flaws or whatever, but I still enjoyed it and I can rate it a little higher. But we'll see.
Yeah. I think hopefully you'll like it. I have kind of vague memories of what happens narratively, but my memory is that I was really excited to go get a new Batgirl trade whenever it would come out. And some of the other Bat Family books I wasn't quite as invested in. So I think part of it was I didn't know as much about that character. So I wasn't as invested or have as many preconceived notions about like, no, this is Batgirl. This is how she should be. But yeah, it was very enjoyable, at least back in the day. I had a lot less DC reading under my belt at the time. So be interesting to see how I react to it now.
Well, I look forward to it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like we've run out of stuff to talk about, and that's not normal in the after show. But
I was going to say it seems like a good place to wrap up the after show. So
yeah,
thanks for listening. Like us, leave us a comment. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you always get our after shows. And of course, check us out on our main sites and of course, wherever you listen to your main podcast episodes at. So thank you
yeah, and we
very
got a few
much.
new people from various countries in the world. So welcome everyone. That's really exciting to see. We're international, baby.
That's right. We're kind of like the Bat family now. We're the boneless family. No, that doesn't sound right. We'll have to come up
The
with
boneless
something.
family.
We'll have to
If
think
you're
about
listening to this and you have bones, we don't want you.
that. All right then. Well, I'm Joe Getcho,
And I'm Mike White.
and this has been another after show. Thank you. Peace out.
We like,
Comic books,
Comic books.
comics, comic book podcasts,
we like,
comic books.
because they